My in-laws thought they could erase me. They stole $85,000 from a combat veterans relief fund just to frame me. They had one blind spot. I was the only soul who knew the labyrinthine path to their hidden $15 million. I am Jason Maxwell, 52 years old, and if you live in New York City, you've likely seen the glare of my success. Not my face, precisely. It's my father-in-law, Senator Harry Thorne's, that smiles down from the massive billboards towering over the Manhattan skyline. But the caption beneath, Thorne and Associates, 25 years of dominance. Those victories? They were mine. Every single one. I was the engine of Thorne and Associates, yet my name remained firmly off the door. A family legacy, they called it. I always thought family racket was more accurate. Before I detail how this ultimate struggle between genuine honor and corrosive greed unfolds, take a moment to drop a comment about where you're connecting from. And please, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this intense family drama unfolds. Let me paint you the prologue. 25 years ago, I was a hungry young attorney, all sharp elbows and relentless drive. I met Victoria at an exclusive Upper East Side fundraiser, one of those gilded events where the city's elite pretended to care about preserving historic brownstones. She was a vision, stunning, self-assured, with that effortless glow of generational wealth. Her father, Harry, owned Thorne and Associates, a powerhouse legal firm rivaling the biggest on Wall Street. We dated for a whirlwind 9 months and married at a lavish estate in the Hamptons, a wedding that likely cost more than 10 years of my starting salary. I believed I was the luckiest man alive. I'd won the lottery. The truth nobody tells you about marrying into money is this: you don't gain a family. You become a junior partner in a corporation. Harry was both my boss and my father-in-law, a duality as oppressive as it sounds. Sunday dinners were quarterly performance reviews. Every holiday became a high-stakes strategy session. And Victoria, my beautiful wife, became the daily obstacle course I had to navigate to get to my desk. Don't upset the wife, don't upset the boss. They were, of course, the same team.
Harry was the firm's face. Silver hair, meticulously styled, year-round golf tan. He'd glide into the office around 10:30 a.m., charm a few Fortune 500 CEOs over an exclusive lunch at the Ritz-Carlton, sign a couple of documents, and be out by 3 p.m. for his tea time. He sold the dream. I engineered the machine that delivered it. Then there was Wesley, my brother-in-law, Harry's golden boy. Wesley had a title, Executive Vice President of Global Acquisitions, a nameplate that seemed to mock the entire legal profession. What it actually meant was that every 3 months, like clockwork, I'd get a panicked call from Harry demanding I make a disaster vanish. The disaster invariably involved Wesley, a Las Vegas casino, and a sum of money that would make your blood run cold. The first time was in the spring of 2007. Wesley lost $65,000 in Vegas over a single weekend. I got the call that Monday. Jason, we have a family crisis. That was code for Wesley screwed up and you need to bury the evidence. I was their cleaner. Harry had spent 30 years constructing a maze of shell corporations, blind trusts, and offshore accounts. I was the only one who understood how the wires crossed. I manufactured a phantom business development expense, routed Wesley's debt through 2 dormant shell companies in Delaware, and reclassified it as a legitimate consulting fee, a masterpiece of creative finance. It cost me 3 days and probably 5 years of my life. Wesley never offered a thank you, only showed up at the next Sunday dinner flashing a new Rolex and bragging about a major win in Atlantic City. This became my secondary job. Wesley would repeatedly detonate in a spectacular fashion. Massive gambling debts, disastrous investments in his friend's artisanal coffee subscription box, or the time he lost $350,000 backing a short-lived, high-end dog-walking app that dissolved faster than ice on a Miami sidewalk. I cleaned it all up, every time. I justified it by saying I was doing it for Victoria, for the family, for the firm whose reputation I was actually building. I told myself loyalty would eventually be rewarded. What a tragic punchline that turned out to be. My real work was brutal, but I was unmatched. I was the lifeblood of Thorne & Associates. Harry brought in the heavy hitters with his pedigree and connections. I won the $100 million cases. I was in the office by 6 a.m. and left near 8 p.m. Weekends? They didn't exist. When you're consolidating a reputation as the most powerful firm on the East Coast. Victoria adored the spoils, the unlimited money, the Tribeca penthouse, the Porsche in the automated garage, her enviable collection of designer handbags. She loved telling her friends her husband was a legal heavyweight. She just resented the fact that being one required me to actually work. About 6 months ago, the shift began. Victoria's phone seemed permanently to live in her car. She started going to the gym, leaving the house in full makeup, returning barely sweating, but demanding a shower. I wasn't an idiot. But when you're the family workhorse, you become an expert in denial, convincing yourself you're paranoid.
Besides, I had real problems, like Wesley's latest fiasco involving a vintage speedboat he sank in Lake Michigan on its maiden voyage. Dinner became a combat zone. Victoria would ask about my day, her eyes glued to her phone. If I mentioned a major case, she'd cut me off. "Jason, all you do is talk about work. It's utterly dull." But I kept going, because I had one thing that was mine, one thing that wasn't about Harry's ego or Wesley's incompetence. The Veterans Aid Clinic. Besides, I had real problems, like Wesley's latest fiasco involving a vintage speedboat he sank in Lake Michigan on its maiden voyage. Dinner became a combat zone. Victoria would ask about my day, her eyes glued to her phone. If I mentioned a major case, she'd cut me off. "Jason, all you do is talk about work. It's utterly dull." But I kept going because I had one thing that was mine, one thing that wasn't about Harry's ego or Wesley's incompetence. The Veterans Aid Clinic. Every Thursday night, I volunteered at the local VFW Post 519 in Queens, offering free legal counsel. My own father, a decorated Army Ranger who died when I was 19, taught me that honor is defined not by what you gain, but by what you give when no one is watching. These veterans, battered by bureaucracy, denied claims, facing foreclosure, they needed a fighter. I knew the system and the loopholes. Harry tolerated it, calling it good for the brand image, but strictly on my time. Victoria despised it. Her dislike started with tight jaws and heavy sighs, then escalated. One Thursday, as I headed out, she looked up from her phone. "You're actually going to that place again? We could be at that new Michelin-starred restaurant." I told her I'd made a commitment. "To strangers? To people you don't even know?" she retorted. But I went. It was the only time I felt real, not just a money shuffler. The guys of the VFW were honest, direct, and forged in hardship. Last month, I helped a Korean War vet named Clarence, 73, whose VA pension was cut off due to a deliberate bureaucratic error. I spent hours on his case, found the mistake, and got his pension restored with 6 months back pay. Clarence cried. "You saved my life," he whispered. That single sentence was worth more than every luxury item Victoria owned. That night, I came home feeling truly good. I made dinner, grilled chicken salad. Victoria descended from her closet, which was the size of a small Boston apartment. She sat down and started scrolling her phone immediately. I tried to share the moment. You know, I helped a veteran today. He was about to lose everything. He was so grateful. Victoria finally made eye contact. Wesley was there too, mooching dinner as usual. He snorted. Playing soldier again, Jason? Real money is made at this table, not in some sad back room with losers. I bit back my response. Then Victoria spoke, without looking up. Jason, please, not at dinner. Your little soldier project is so cheap. Cheap. 25 years of 70-hour weeks, 25 years of cleaning Wesley's messes and building the reputation they stamped their name on, 25 years of funding a life for a woman who couldn't spare me a glance. And the one thing I did for my soul, the one thing that honored my father and helped people who deserved it, she called cheap. I sat there, the engine they never looked at, the source of their lavish lives, and realized I was just an employee who lived in the mansion. I went to my home office, the only truly private room, and looked at the photo of my father in his army uniform. Cheap. That word was the crack in the dam. The fall was about to begin. 2 days later, at 7 a.m., a text from Harry. Emergency family meeting, 8 a.m. sharp, conference room. 8 a.m. Wesley, who considered noon an unreasonable time to be conscious, was already there, freshly showered and in a bespoke suit. Harry sat at the head of the table. Wesley and Victoria flanked him. They stared at me like a jury. This wasn't a meeting. Harry cleared his throat. Jason, we have a problem. $85,000 has gone missing from the Jenkins Family Trust. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Jenkins, 90 years old, widow of a World War II vet. The trust was for her grandson, who had a severe disability. That money was sacred. Wesley slid a manila folder across the table, his hands trembling. The transfer was made from your terminal, yesterday at 7:30 p.m., to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I opened the folder. My login, my digital signature, $85,000. Gone. 7:30 p.m. I was in the parking garage at 7:30 p.m. I'd stayed late. Victoria had texted me saying she was running late, asking me to wait for her. I'd run back in to grab my jacket, leaving my terminal unlocked. Stupid. The kind of mistake someone could have been waiting for. I looked at Wesley. He was sweating. He did this. I looked at Harry. He was protecting his son, as always. But this time, he was asking me to take the fall. Then I looked at Victoria. She held my gaze. Calm. Too calm. She texted me to wait. She gave Wesley the window. Victoria, tell them. I was waiting for you. We were supposed to have dinner. She tilted her head, her expression of bored dismissal. Jason, I think it's time you leave. This obsession with veterans, it's not healthy. We're worried about you. They weaponized it. My one good deed was now evidence of instability. I laughed, a dark, desperate sound. You're serious? This won't survive 10 minutes of forensic accounting. I'll subpoena the logs. I'll demand a full audit. Harry held up a hand. You can demand whatever you want. We'll call the NYPD, and while your name is splattered across the tabloids, we'll make sure everyone knows about October 2005. The air went out of the room. October 2005. Victoria, drunk after a girls' night, had called me at 2 a.m., crying, terrified she'd hit something, a mailbox, maybe. She'd made it home, the Mercedes mangled. Harry had made the problem disappear. No police report, the car vanished, witnesses bought and silenced. But there had been a hit-and-run report filed in New Jersey that night. A college student, a cyclist. He survived, barely, with a brain injury. They kept the evidence. Photos of the wrecked car, medical reports, timelines, insurance, a loaded gun waiting for this moment. Harry's voice was surgical. You can sign a statement admitting gross negligence, surrender your license voluntarily, and leave quietly. We'll make Mrs. Jenkins whole, and nobody ever has to know about that night. Your choice. It was checkmate. If I fought, they'd destroy Victoria. And worse, they'd destroy the peace of the innocent cyclist, forcing him to relive the trauma in a media circus. I could burn her, but I'd burn an innocent person too. I signed the paper, my hand moving like it belonged to a stranger. Gross negligence. Voluntary surrender of law license. Wesley wouldn't look at me. Harry shook my hand, as if closing a routine deal. Victoria checked her phone. I was merely a solved problem. I drove home. A brand new Aston Martin in British racing green sat in the driveway. I'd never seen it before. Inside, my expensive luggage set, the one I'd bought Victoria for our anniversary trip to Paris, sat packed, waiting for me. Victoria came down the grand staircase, adjusting a pearl earring. Behind her was a man, tall, late 40s, a suit that cost a small fortune, and a proprietary hand on the small of Victoria's back. "Who is this?" I asked. Victoria smiled. "Jason, this is Robert Harrington, my divorce attorney. And well, not just that. We've been seeing each other for a few months. He's been helping me understand my options." Robert stepped forward, his wristwatch likely worth more than the Jenkins Trust. "Jason, I've heard a lot about you. This isn't personal. It's just business. The penthouse is held in a trust established by Harry. The Victoria is the beneficiary. Given the circumstances, it's best if you vacate the premises by the end of business today." Victoria added, "Robert says that given your negligence admission, I'm entitled to keep all marital assets. You'll be lucky to walk away with your clothes." I looked at her, searching for the woman I married. She was gone. Maybe she'd always been gone. I picked up my suitcases. Robert called after me. "Oh, Jason, one more thing. Victoria and I are planning a small ceremony in Napa Valley next month. Family only. You understand?" I understood. This was a hostile takeover. The $85,000 wasn't about the money. It was the price of my total obliteration. The cost of making me vanish without having to split the assets I'd created. I had been their cleaner, the man who made problems disappear. Now I was the problem. I put the luggage in my car, the one I'd be lucky to keep for another month before the repo man from J.P. Morgan Chase came calling. Victoria stood in the doorway, Robert's arm around her. She closed the door. A month passed. The billboard lawyer now lived in a room above a bar in Bushwick called the Thirsty Patriot. It smelled like stale beer. My accounts were frozen. I spent my days staring at a crack in the ceiling, mapping out a road to nowhere. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Jason, this is Terry, the manager at the VFW. I hadn't heard from anyone there, figured I was toxic. Listen, I've got an emergency. Old Sergeant Major Miller, 85, a Marine from Vietnam. They're evicting him tomorrow. A reverse mortgage scam. Bank says he owes $300,000. He's going to be on the street." Sergeant Major Miller. Quiet guy. Lost his wife 3 years ago. The house was all he had left. "Terry, I can't. My license is suspended. I'm not a lawyer anymore." Terry's voice was the drill sergeant's. "I don't need a lawyer. I need you. Just look at the papers. As a friend." I went. I drove my repossessed car in waiting
to the VFW. Sergeant Major Miller was in the back room. The paperwork was a 6-inch stack of legal jargon designed to confuse and crush. Textbook predatory lending. They'd convinced him to take a reverse mortgage, telling him he could stay for life. But the fine print stated that if he missed a property tax payment or let the homeowner's insurance lapse, the entire $300,000 became due immediately. Buried on page 47 was a notice that his insurance had been canceled 6 months ago, sent to an address he hadn't lived at in a decade. A deliberate fraud.
I picked up the phone and called the bank's legal department. First National Trust, the same one that tried to foreclose on Gunny. I got a junior associate. My name is Jason Maxwell. I'm calling on behalf of Sergeant Major Miller regarding his property foreclosure. You're going to want to write down the federal statute you just violated. You failed to provide proper notice under the Truth in Lending Act. You initiated foreclosure without proper notification under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. And you did all of this to a combat veteran. Silence. I'm sorry, who did you say you were? I repeated my name, letting every syllable land. You do that, and you tell your supervisor that if I don't have a representative here in 1 hour with a full cancellation of this foreclosure and a written apology, my next call is to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and every news outlet in New York. I'm sure they'd love a story about your bank stealing a home from an elderly Marine right before Thanksgiving. We'll have someone there in 40 minutes. Terry was staring. I'd just threatened a major financial institution with federal prosecution without a license. It felt right. You still got it, kid, Terry said. Then the door opened. A woman walked in. Late 70s, maybe early 80s. Draped in a perfectly tailored cashmere coat. Silver hair, styled like a crown. Not the type to wander into a VFW. Mrs. Eleanor Lowenstein, Terry stammered, standing at attention. We weren't expecting you. Her voice was quiet, commanding. I heard Sergeant Major Miller was having trouble. My late husband served with him. I came to make sure the bank wasn't pulling anything. Terry gestured to me. Already handled, ma'am. Jason took care of it. She looked at me, unshaven, wearing a sweater with a hole. You're a lawyer. I was. You're Jason, the one who worked at Thorne and Associates. My foundation is their largest client. They told me you'd retired for health issues. I had nothing left to lose. Mrs. Lowenstein, those health issues are named Wesley Thorne. They accused me of stealing $85,000 from a veteran's widow to cover up his gambling debts. Framed me for it, used my terminal, and blackmailed me with a 20-year-old secret. She nodded slowly. I always told Harry his son had a terrible poker face. Thank you for helping Sergeant Major Miller. He's family to me. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. Jason, do you have a business card? I almost laughed. No, ma'am, not anymore. She pulled out her own, wrote on the back, and handed it to me. Call me tomorrow, 9 a.m. We should talk about your future. I drove back to my room above the bar, staring at the card. Eleanor Lowenstein, Lowenstein Family Trust. I called at 9 a.m. exactly. Jason, I've been doing some auditing. You were right about Wesley being careless, but Harry is smarter. They've been hiding money. I need someone who built the system. An insider. I'll pay you as a consultant. Mrs. Lowenstein, I'll do it for free. They destroyed my life. I want to watch them burn. We met at her Greenwich Village brownstone. Old money. Real money. She showed me the financial statements. The pattern was beautiful in its simplicity and horrifying in its audacity. They were using the same predatory lending playbook on her multi-million-dollar foundation trust, coding wire transfers as real estate development.
The same bank was laundering the money through shell mortgage companies, then offshore accounts in the Bahamas. They've been bleeding it for years, I said. That $85,000 from the Jenkins Trust? That was a test run. They were perfecting the system. How much? She asked, her eyes turning to ice. I did the math. Conservatively, over the past 5 years, $15 million, maybe more. 1 week later, the news hit. The Lowenstein Family Trust, valued at $200 million, was severing all ties with Thorne and Associates due to gross financial improprieties and potential fraud. That was 90% of the firm's business. Thorne and Associates collapsed in 48 hours. Harry was under investigation by the state bar. Wesley was facing federal charges, wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The bank that helped him got hit with its own investigation.
The last thing I saw was last week. I was having lunch with Mrs. Lowenstein at the Four Seasons, and there was Victoria, carrying a water pitcher, wearing a server's uniform. She didn't look up, but her hands shook as she poured my water. Mrs. Lowenstein called me the next day. "Jason, I'm consolidating my assets and the assets of several friends, about $550 million total. I'm creating a new family office. I need a leader, someone who knows the difference between what's legal and what's right. Someone who will fight for an old Marine's house like it's $1 billion trust, because they're worth the same thing: honor." I became the CEO of the Lowenstein Family Office. My salary? Let's just say I could buy what's left of Thorne and Associates with pocket change. My ex-wife used to laugh at my cheap volunteer work. She didn't understand something fundamental. They betrayed the one person who knew all their secrets, the person who built the machine. It turns out that cheap volunteer work wasn't cheap at all. It was the most expensive thing I ever did. It cost me a marriage, a career that was killing me, and the family that never respected me. And it bought me something I'd forgotten I possessed: my soul back. My father was right. Honor isn't about what you get. It's about what you give when nobody's keeping score. The scoreboard takes care of itself. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure, especially when money was involved? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are with the people who were supposed to love us most. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about finding strength in difficult situations. Drop a like if you believe honor isn't about what you get. It's about what you give when nobody's keeping score. The scoreboard takes care of itself. Thank you for listening. And remember, family is about love and support, not control and manipulation. Share this story with someone who might need to hear that message today.